Hey there, welcome to a new episode. We are in North Carolina, and this is a very special airplane. I coded this plane about 4 years ago, so this is an older coded airplane. And on this panel, right here, we did a whole bunch of split testing. So I think we tested like 6 or 9 different coding combinations, and based on that, we used crystal serum, which is the coating we use now. So the whole plane was done in crystal serum, like I said, about 4 years ago, so in 2016, summer of 16, it's now July of 2020. There is some staining that just happens over time. Again, it has a lot of hours on it, so that's to be expected. I'd rather have the coating stain than the paint stain, so when we take the coating off, that staining should come off with it as well. I did a little test area back here where I just polished off all the old coating on it, and you can see there's good white paint underneath there, so that's encouraging. We're going to do some water spots on the wings and see how it's beating there compared to how it's beating on the fuselage, and then we're going to start with a foam wash, no rinse, and then from the top paint correction coating. So here's the wingtip. No exhaust happening here, right? That's doing pretty good. Pass. Left hand wing root. A lot of exhaust here usually. Yeah, not bad. Definitely no oxidation. "4 years of never waxing your plane." Okay, let's try something else. Alright, this is right hand side, exhaust is right there. This is going aft. So it's more of a sheeting action here versus a beating action, but there's definitely still coating on that surface. The water is not soaking into the paint, and the paint is not porous at all. At all. Basically feels like it's clear coated. Right hand side inboard wing section. That's just showing off. So why do I think this plane did so well? A few reasons. One, it got well maintained. It got washed regularly, exhaust is getting stripped off, and it hasn't been buffed or waxed. When you're using wax, especially one of those buffer things, you're creating a lot of friction, and that friction is going to affect the coating, right? Secondly, and in full disclosure, I think, I'm not 100%, but I think that this is clear coated. I'll check with the owner. And coatings and clear coat just work really well. So if you have a more porous single stage paint, the coating soaks into the paint and it kind of protects it from the inside. With a clear coat, it just layers right on top because that clear coat's less porous. So I think that might have something to do with why this coating's working so well on this plane. The other thing, it's just a damn good coating. I did a lot of testing before using this coating, so you know, it's a pretty hardcore coating. It's not something that you can just pick up at AutoZone. It's not turtle ceramic wax, right? It's an actual coating. If I screw up the coating, I have to sand it off. That should tell you about how serious it is. I'm pleased with how it's done. Now we're going to wash it. We're going to foam the exhaust and oil off and follow up everything with no rinse. 1 to 20 dilution of no rinse, about a 1 to 30 dilution of release ultra foam, and then we'll start polishing. If you've been watching for a while and you're like, hey, why don't you use the citrus foam anymore? First of all, this is more fun. Secondly, the Release Ultra does a really good job of taking the exhaust and floating it to the top of the foam. Because of that, you can just work a larger area, and as it pulls away, because it's a lower concentration soap, it's easier to get the soap residue off, because of course after we use any kind of soap on a coating, we want to strip the soap off, because soap's really hydrophilic and we don't want to coat the coating with a hydrophilic soap solution. So the less soap you put on there, the less wiping you have to do afterwards with no rinse. As much as I tried, I can't get what I see to show up on the camera. This is a little bit wider than this. To prove it to you, I've got the Color Lock color scanner. So we're going to take a measurement here. Then we're going to take a measurement here. So you can see there is a color change. With different color lights, different green outside, I just can't get this to show up. But there is a color change, and the more dramatic example of that is actually a little further back. Check this out. So I did the exact same thing here, polished, not polished. There's just more buildup here, so that's why the contrast was more, but I'll take a measurement here too. This is basically what's happening there, just not as pronounced. So you believe me, paint correction makes it wider. The coating protected the paint underneath there. All we're doing is remove the coating, put new coating on, and send it. So this is the raw data coming off of the color scanner. This is a lab color value, LAB. The one on the right is after polishing, the one on the left is before polishing. I ran the lab values through a color converter, which puts it out in a different format that's more understandable. And the one I want you to look at is CMYK, which is used for printing. So how much cyan, magenta, yellow, and black do you need to make that color? The one on the right, after polishing, again, this is the really subtle one in the front of the plane, right, where you could barely tell the difference. You can see it uses ever so slightly less magenta and yellow to constitute that color. So for what it's worth, I don't know if this is even scientific. After polishing, the color is lighter. Now, if we look at the next section, which is the before and after I did further back on the fuselage, that was much more dramatic. We take the color codes. Top, you can see, is lighter. Bottom is already more yellow, but we take those values, plug them into the converter. On the right, after polishing, look at that CMYK value. So that's 11, 10, 13, 0. On the left, before, 13, 11, 20, 0. So specifically, that yellow value is reduced, right? It went from 20% yellow to 13% yellow. So this is basically just a very long-winded way of saying that polishing makes your paint whiter by removing the accumulated exhaust. Sometimes it's very obvious, like in this case, and sometimes you need a literal color scanner to prove it to the world. But it's always visible. When you're there in person, you can definitely tell. So even after thorough cleaning, when we do a paint correction, there's usually still exhaust residue. I mean, there's old coating, old paint coming off. So that's why pad washing is so important, to make sure we get a clean polishing pad for good performance. It makes a big difference in how well the paint correction goes. After polishing the fuselage, alcohol wipe it, remove any oils or paint residue that might be left on there. Then the coating's wiped on and wiped off, and we have a beautiful finish. Now onto the wings. You can see what a paint correction is doing. So on the right hand side, this is before, left hand side after. Much better. Those results extrapolate over the rest of the wing. Then again, we coat the wings, polish the underside,
coat the underside, and we're done. Plane looks beautiful, and I'm excited to see how it looks in another 5 years. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you at the next one.